So today I'm talking about how to get to your authentic self. I mentioned last time your point of view, meaning your point of view for your podcast. And I said that when you have these podcasts or whatever you want to call them, because I'm a radio guy and a television guy. And now there's podcasts, remember there were blogs and then there were vlogs, and now we have podcasts. And whatever the future thing is going to be, I put it on the category of broadcasting. And I mentioned before, I'm a 30 plus year broadcaster. I majored in radio and television. I've been doing it forever. And so I got a lot of information about how to be a great broadcaster. And it'll fit on any platform. Okay. So getting to your authentic self, it reminds me I'm a musician. I played in high school, okay, in college. Not a real musician, but the process of getting to your authentic self is similar to finding your voice as a musician. And again, I'm 59, so this could be old school, but I think it's always great to know these things. Could help you have a perspective. So when you're a musician, normally you pick your instrument and then you pick out your favorite artists who play that instrument. And most of the time, something about how they play reminds you or resonates with you. And most musicians, especially in the old days, you'd have your favorite, you'd probably play a similar style, and then eventually, out of that, create your own style. I think broadcasting is the same thing. For instance, for myself, for me, growing up, in addition to, DJs that were, my city did not have a black radio station, but the DJs that I heard in St. Louis, East St. Louis, and then the people in my market, they'd be an influence, but the stars that were influences, for me, mainly, was Howard Cosell.
Now in the first quarter, trailing 3-0. Bradshaw was red hot, throwing deep to the graceful Lynn Swan touchdown.
Bryant Gumbel.
Coming up in this half hour, we're going to be talking with the man who holds the second highest office in the land. He is, of course, Vice President George Bush, Ronald Reagan's strongest Republican opponent in the 1980 campaigning, now one of the administration's leading spokesmen. He'll give Chris Wallace a forecast for the year ahead.
Tom Joyner.
It's time to go for that Any Love to See, Any Love package. The one that qualifies you for the 3-hop stop to go to New York and see Michael, Luther, and Prince perform. 7th caller, 591 for GCI.
And probably Doug Banks. And each of those that I mentioned had a quality that I aspired to have. Howard Cosell was brilliant. He was dramatic. He had skill with words. He was so descriptive. And again, he was very dramatic. He had a distinct sound, a staccato type of delivery, which I don't have, but I really was a big fan. Then you had Bryant Gumbel, who was, for those who don't remember, he was really the first black news anchor for a morning television show. He was the first broadcaster who came from sports into news. And his personality was totally different than mine in that he wasn't warm, he wasn't personable, he was smart, and he was good. And that's what stood out for me. He was very good. He always asked the hard question. He was kind of no nonsense, kept it moving. And then Tom Joyner probably was the personality that I probably sounded most like, I related to. He was very personable. He was personable. He was warm. He was like the guy you want to have a cup of coffee with or beer with. He was kind of like your favorite uncle. That probably was the personality that I identified with. And in fact, I'll never forget my first job. The late Cliff Fletcher in Charleston, South Carolina at Z93 told me, "Man, you sound like a young Tom Joyner." And I was blessed enough to work with Tom Joyner later in life. And I said, Tom, they said I sounded like a young Tom Joyner. Now I sound like an old Tom Joyner. So that was my joke when I worked in New York. But anyway, enough about me. So, finding a personality that you relate to and then kind of growing your personality. And so nowadays, you got, Cam and Mace, they have a podcast. Shannon Sharp has a podcast. Stephen A. Smith, he has a podcast. Of course, Joe Budden, these different personalities are out there. Different than the generation that I grew up with, because I grew up in a generation where the gatekeepers, you had to get on a platform. You couldn't just start a podcast or start broadcasting. You had to get on a podcast. You had to get vetted. You have to have certain skill sets. So it's changed, but it's still the same when you talk about attracting an audience, entertaining an audience, and presenting for an audience. Okay? And so, how you develop your personality or your point of view, your authentic self is number one. Who are you? Who are you? Write down characteristics that you say about yourself. For me, for instance, I would say I am, like I say, I'm relatable. I'm warm. I like people. I'm funny. I try to be funny. I'm family oriented. So my content's going to probably be more, safe, not over the top. I'm passionate about things I believe in. I probably come with a certain moral perspective or point of view. I'm definitely, I root for the little guy. I'm liberal. So write down, who are you? And then listen to the different shows that are out there and see if you relate to anybody. You may not, and that's even better, because the best part about this new world we live in with podcasts is it's not about being like somebody else. In our day, you had to have a certain voice. You had to have a certain, that's over. Now what they found is the more niche you are, the more successful your podcasts are. So in other words, whatever topic it is, if you're a specialist in, I make doors for flies and little insects, there's somebody out there that cares about that. There's somebody out there that cares about whatever you're into. And that's the thing. If you're an expert in it or passionate about it, that's what you do. Don't try to be like somebody else. Don't try to do somebody else's shtick. Do your own shtick, okay? And so today we talked about being your authentic self. And the other option is if you're going to be a character, an over-the-top character. And in our next conversation, we'll talk about those over-the-top characters and give you some concepts on that. All right? Have a good one.